Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 23 of Let Them See You. I have a dream. We all have dreams, especially in education. And our dreams often revolve around data, supporting kids, showing growth. Those are parts of our dream. But of course, it's a play on Dr. King's famous I Have a Dream speech. We all have these hopes and things that we want to move forward. We just have to think through how we want to move those things forward. It's action. So, before we get into that, it's a little bit of a quick chat. First of all, there was this big hoopla around Stranger Things having an extra episode, these conspiracy theories, and it didn't happen. So, oh well, that's done. I was a little bit hoping that they would have another episode. That would have been such a wonderful, epic thing to do because no one's done it before. Not in a show that popular to say, oh, this is the finale and this is the extra part of the finale, and then have everybody on pins and needles and conspiracies come about, and then they say, just kidding, this is the real finale. That would have been amazing and unheard of. And I think they missed an opportunity to do it. I wonder if they were sitting at home, the brothers, and thinking to themselves, maybe we should have done that. That actually is a good idea. Yeah, you should have. I think that would have been great. Everybody that I spoke with about it said it just seemed like it ended too abruptly. It was too easy. How in the world did they all live? Nobody died. It was weird. But that's okay. That's Stranger Things. I'm done. It's over. Um, Moving on to other things I'm thinking about. I said in another episode how I like sports analogies. And I like sports in general. I'm not the sports buff. I cannot rattle off statistics. I don't know those things. And I'm not going to pretend that I do. And I'm not the type to go and study it. I don't want to say that I don't care like that. I do care. It's just that it's not my thing. I just like to watch it and I get into it. It's the emotion of it. It's the emotion of it. And I like the players are like characters to me. And then sometimes the players are like friends. It depends on what I'm watching. But one thing that I do like to watch a lot of is like basketball. I probably watch basketball, and then second to is football. So basketball, let's just say NBA, WNBA. Over the years, when I think about basketball and what I like about basketball, a lot of it has to do with the way the team is coached. So when growing up, I grew up in H-Town in Houston for part of the time, right? And in Houston, we had Rudy Tomjanovich. That is the coach that I remember. I went to the parade when it was Clutch City and they did the sweep and people had brooms hanging out their windows, and the everybody was like all together honking and everybody was so excited. It was when, they played in the Summit. Like, I'm that old. I'm telling my age. So I recall those things. And I remember a lot of people talking about how Rudy Tomjanovich coached. And I think that I see coaches like that and think to myself, wow, that's amazing to have that kind of name for yourself. You must be doing something right. I thought the same thing about Phil Jackson. When I look at Michael Jordan and I look at the players that were around Michael Jordan, I think about, wow, that's incredible that what he was able to do with him and the team around him is incredibly coached, right? I think about also how sometimes the players coach themselves. If you haven't seen, I can't even remember the name of the documentary, but it's the one with Michael Jordan. And he was talking about how he kind of made up in his mind that somebody said something about him and it was mean. And he had a chip on his shoulder about it forever. He was like, no, they said this about me and that's not what's up. I'm not letting it slide. And that is what drove him throughout his play. I said, oh my gosh, amazing. But to me, it's like, that was him creating a mountain. And sometimes really, really people that are high achieving, that tend to do things really well all the time and they attain their goals, they set new goals. But sometimes the way they set the goal is they create another mountain for themselves. They say, okay, now that I've done this, I need another challenge. I've got to do this. They move their own goalpost. That is how really good players become better players. Steph Curry. What else could he possibly have done? What else could he have possibly done to be better? I will say one thing about Steph Curry is he works. The man was in the gym. There's a lot of repetition and work on the fundamentals. And I think that is true for anyone that excels at a high level in what they do. It has to be something that is repeated and practiced and intentional as far as the way you use your time. Steph Curry, you can see him in the gym doing drills. You can see him shooting over and over and over again. You can see him kind of repeating the areas from which he shoots. That half court shot he's able to bank in, it's because he practiced that again and again and again. He knows how to do it. It looks like a trick shot to us because we don't see it all the time, but he does it all the time. I'm sure he practices it. That's how you get good at something. So when I was looking at and listening to Strong Ground by Brene Brown, I'm still reading it. She mentioned a couple of coaches. Another coach that she mentioned was what's his name? Greg Popovich with the San Antonio Spurs. Okay, the Spurs was never my favorite team. Again, I'm a Houston Rockets fan. Rockets, Texans, Astros, Houston teams. So the Spurs were never, one of my teams. But what I admired so much about their team, they were not flashy. There was no pomp and circumstance with the San Antonio Spurs. It was straight up fundamentals. Even I think it was Tim Duncan with that his nickname was the Big Fundamental. He just played the game well, and that's how they were coached. Straight up fundamentals, and everybody knew what Pop expected, and that is what they gave. And what I found even more interesting when she was talking about coaches in the book, she brought up Becky Hammon. I don't know if it was an age thing or I just wasn't paying attention, but she talked about how Becky Hammon was the first female paid assistant coach in the NBA. Not the WNBA, the NBA. So she was in a male-dominated field coaching males. Interesting. And she did it under Greg Popovich for 8 years. And she did it successfully under Greg Popovich for 8 years. So she honed her coaching skills under someone like that, and then it prepared her to be a coach on her own team. She became the coach of the Las Vegas Aces, where in their first season, they won a WNBA championship. So she did something right. She knew what she was doing, obviously. They knew she knew what she was doing when they hired her, because she trained under Greg Popovich and was able to get production out of some of the best players in the league over the course of her time there. So the question became like, what did she do to do that? She mastered fundamentals. What are the basics? Before she was trying to work on how do we be innovative, how do we do things in a new and cool way, it was, do we do the basics? Same thing in education. You have to have the basics under your belt. Classroom management. How do we enter the building? How is arrival? How is dismissal? How are we moving throughout the hallway? What do transitions look like? Those are the basics. She's really good at that. Another thing, she had a really good relationship, or has a really good relationship with her players. And she built that trust because she was consistent and clear. I can't tell you how appreciative I am of leaders who are consistent and clear. It is hard to work with and learn from leaders who are inconsistent and unclear. That is probably one of the most frustrating things you could ever experience, especially when you're being asked to produce something that is not modeled and explained. So it's really nice to see leaders who do that. And Becky Hammon is one of them. She did it. So she had the team master the fundamentals before trying to do anything innovative. She also earned their trust by being consistent and being clear. She also prepared very, very meticulously so that the team knew how to play. So whoever they were about to face, there was a plan, and the team knew the plan, and they prepared for the plan. I was never on anybody's basketball team, but I always hear them say things like, oh, I had to watch film and I had to study such and such player, or I had to study this position. Oh, they always seem to go up with their left hand, or they always go to the right, or they always bounce twice and then they switch. These are the things that players study, so they're prepared for what's to come. They study it. The same thing happens in education. Just like Becky Hammon, we talked about how you have to plan meticulously. That is something that has to happen. If you are not planning to do well, you don't do well. It can't be off the cuff. You have to know who you're playing, what you're up against, and you have to plan for it. If not, it's not going to go well. So those sentence stems that you have kids use when they're about to turn and talk or have some type of structured dialogue, those questions that you want to ask them, yeah, it's okay to do it off the cuff, but it's way better and more intentional if it's planned, because there is a purpose for rigor. You can't get it if you're flying off the cuff all the time. You have to plan for it. You have to. That is fundamental. You also have to have systems already in place so that nobody is guessing. One of those systems is an expectation that you plan, right? That would be a system. We know that the expectation is we get together, we plan, and we execute lessons that match what we plan. And so the expectation is that the students are going to grow because we have data that we gathered based on what we plan to teach. And then we use the data to plan some more. These are the fundamentals. These are the basics. This is the same thing that Becky Hammon's doing with the team. Same things. You don't think they look at their stats? You don't think they look at how many rebounds that somebody got it versus a team and thought to themselves, why did you get less rebounds with them versus this team? What did they do to stop you? So we got to get you to get past that hump, because we can't let this next team stop us, because I guarantee you they're watching the film from that game to see what that team did to be so successful against you. So let's not let that be replicated. Here we go. That is data. Same things. Teams have to feel safe taking risks. We know what works, but if we have clear expectations and we know that everybody is willing to be consistent and push through and get it done, then when it's time for somebody to try something new, there won't be a lot of pushback. The response will likely be, okay, let's try it. Because there will be enough trust built up that, okay, we know that this way works. You know that we've put in the work and we've done what needs to be done and we've gotten results. So what if we tried this one thing? This could work. Let's try it. I trust you. Let's try it. But it's hard to build that kind of trust if you're not consistent. And it's hard to build that kind of trust if you're not clear. So everybody has to be on the same page. Everybody has to be consistent. There has to be a cohesiveness on the team. There is no way teams win championships if there's no cohesion. It's a group effort. And a lot of the times there are roles that people just take under their wing, that you hear that term, the sixth man, all the time. And it doesn't necessarily mean like man. It's like the person off the bench in basketball, right? You're not a starter, but you know when it's your turn to come in, the job that you're supposed to do, and you get it done. It's important. It's an important job. Do it. But consistently, when you get that done, the team does well. They know that they can count on you because that's what was planned for. And consistently, that is what's done. So just to recap, what is the beauty of Becky Hammon as a coach? She made sure the team mastered the fundamentals before moving on to something different. Okay, same thing in education, planning, making sure instruction follows, classroom management, making sure the campus is on the same page as far as what the vision is. Fundamentals. Then we have earning trust through consistency and clarity. Same thing in education. We have to have systems in place so that everybody knows the expectation. And then she prepared relentlessly for what was to come so that there could be an ease to trying new things. That is what we should be expecting in education. If you're well prepared and you know what you're supposed to be doing, when it's time to try something new, there should be an ease, because it's not an extra thing. It's just a small tweak. It's just a deeper dive. It's not an extra. You don't view it that way. There's an ease because you know what works. No one's telling you to change that. They're just telling you to make a small tweak to be that much better. Beautiful. This is what wins championships. So then in your mind, you should be thinking like a Becky Hammon. What wins championships? Do it. She's not, your loud, flashy coach. She worked under Greg Popovich. He was pretty like stone-faced most of the time. And that's what I think is important about knowing who you are. You have to stand firm in that and what your values are. If you're not that stone-faced leader, that stone-faced coach, that's fine. You could still be consistent and clear and prepared and strong in fundamentals, like Becky Hammon. Another person that she didn't necessarily dive deep with, Brene Brown, she talked more about how this person is also someone she looks up to. And that was Dawn Staley. So she said how Dawn Staley, she's this Hall of Fame basketball player, and she's a championship winning coach for the University of South Carolina women's basketball team. She is a Gamecock legend, right? She's also an Olympic gold medalist. She's a phenomenal leader and well-known author. She's just a well-known leader. She has very high expectations for her players, very high. And I think in education, great leaders have to have really high expectations of the players. And she's not asking anything of them that she doesn't ask of herself. She has high expectations of herself as well as a coach. And they are willing to work up to those expectations because they know that she also cares about them. There's a care there. There's a humanity that they know that she has. And that's an important part of working with someone. If they don't feel like you care about them, it's not going to work. The students aren't going to learn if they don't feel like you care about them. The same goes for the leadership of the campus and the teachers. They have to feel like you care about them as a person, as a human, before you worry about just the expectations, right? So you have to hold people accountable for what's expected of them without losing the fact that they are human beings. And Dawn Staley is good at that. She's very good at that. She has great relationships with her players. Another thing is that she's just built this culture of discipline and accountability. Her players are very disciplined. They know even when it gets roughed that they have to keep going and that they have to dig. She doesn't take too kindly to giving up, and she doesn't take too kindly to, like, I don't want to call it whining or complaining or excuses, but yes, that's what they are. She doesn't take kindly to that. It's one of those, okay, that happened. What are we going to do about it? This is what we're going to do about it. There is no time for all of that. So she's built this culture where they trust her and they understand that discipline means you keep going even when it's hard. You got to go. And you have to be accountable for the outcome. She does that. She also will say, if this isn't going well, I'm going to call it out. And if you're the reason why it's not going well, I'm going to call it out. Because if we sugarcoat everything and sweep everything under the rug, then how do we fix it? We can't. So we have to be sure that we're willing and able to be open enough to receiving the feedback that we will get. Dawn Staley gave some feedback. She gives some feedback to those players, right? And she builds other leaders because they're willing to give feedback to one another. If you watch her team, they have great communication amongst themselves. They call themselves to huddles and talk to each other because she's building other leaders. You see her in them. It's a beautiful thing. She also leads with a lot of courage. And, that's on and off the court. She leads with a lot of courage. It's not always easy to speak up and speak out. And she's somebody that will do that. She will do that. But that doesn't come easily to everybody. So what do? In education, it goes back to, there's that S word, systems. You have to have systems in place to make that happen. It's a lot easier to dig deep and get the work done when you're courageous, when you have that ability to fail forward. There will be mistakes and it's not going to be perfect, but you have to be willing to try. And there's a trust there. If we're all on the same page and we're all trying, then we'll all fail together and we'll learn from it and we'll do better as time goes on. That's the way we see it. So you can't grow if you're not willing to try and possibly fail and possibly get ridiculed for failing. So you have to keep going. So just to recap, Dawn Staley, the beauty of her coaching is she sets really high expectations. She also cares about her players. So they know where those high expectations are coming from. They know that she's wanting them to be winners. Same thing in education, holding your staff and your students to those high standards without forgetting that they're human beings first. And then also she builds this culture that is rooted in a lot of discipline and accountability and trust. You have to have that culture in place. Everybody's got to be willing to work together. And when you see a crack in it, you got to fix it. Because if not, it can break and shatter everything. So, cracks aren't bad because cracks let the light in. You need to see, ooh, that's where the issue is. We fix it. I'd rather see the crack than think that everything's okay and all of a sudden it shatters into pieces. Show me the crack so that I can fix the crack. I don't want this underlying problem wherein foundationally the whole thing's weak and I had no idea. That's not what we want. And then another thing that Dawn Staley is really good at is that she leads with courage. A very courageous leader. So in reading this book and I heard about that, I had to stop what I was doing and write down some things because I thought to myself, wait, why didn't I hear more about Becky Hammon? Why don't I hear enough about Dawn Staley? Now, recently I heard more about her, but in the past, the first female paid assistant coach in the NBA, why wasn't she on my wall? Like, I should have had a poster of her. It wasn't talked about as much as I think it probably should have been. And, it is what it is. But looking at Staley and how and Becky Hammon, they both have some things in common. And one of the things they have in common is culture. You have to have a very strong culture on your team. And in order to have a very strong culture, everyone has to have a shared a vision of and where they're trying to go. What are we trying to accomplish here? Both of them have that, and they invested in that for long periods of time before their team was prepared for championships. This is the same for schools in education. Invest in a culture. It doesn't even have to be education. Anything that you're a part of, any group that you're a part of, culture is important. I don't care what anybody says. If the culture of that group, the culture of that organization is weak and poor, nobody wants to be there. Nobody wants to do it, and it's going to show. So invest in your culture. It matters all the time. That means in schools, get your routines in place, get your relationships in place, trust each other, culture. Another thing that Staley and Hammond had in common is high expectations. They have really high expectations of their players, but they also support them. So, whatever they need, they're there. But one of the biggest things they know they need is rigor, discipline. There's a whole lot of that. Nobody said it would be easy. You're going to do those, what are those, suicides? I hate the name, but yeah, the things where you got to like run the part of the court and then run back and then run further away and then run back and run further away and run back. Horrible, horrible stuff. But I bet you it helps when it's time for them to pivot quickly on the court. Fundamentals, easy stuff. Also, they're courageous. Both of them are courageous leaders. Both of them were able to, can you imagine I can't imagine what Becky Hammon went through when she was in the locker room or not, right? Some of the conversations she heard, some of the jokes that were made, probably them having to defend her on multiple occasions, most likely, because it hasn't always been widely accepted for a female to be part of the leadership in the NBA. I'm sure that was rough at times. And it took courage for her to say, oh, well, forget them. I'm still doing it. And she did. And kudos to her, because it takes that kind of courage to move things forward. I truly think Becky could have been an NBA head coach. They wasn't ready for that, though. They weren't ready for Becky in the NBA. She might have embarrassed some people. So, who am I to say? But I think she would have done better than half the coaches that we have now. Anyway, they both take risks. That's something that I'm working on. Man, risk taking is like, having a plan is so comfortable, right? I like the plan, but deviating from the plan in the name of risk taking so that you can grow and students can grow is not easy. It's very strategic, and you have to do it at the right time and the right way. So it's a risk. That's why it's called a risk. You can win a lot or not. You also have to be clear, and you have to be bold, even under scrutiny. Another thing I had to learn, you will be scrutinized. It doesn't matter what you say, what you do, how you say it, how you do it. You can be what you think is the most perfect person that doesn't bother anyone. Someone will think you're stuck up. You can be the most buttoned up, well-spoken, well-read leader in the world, and somebody's going to say, but she didn't know this. But she didn't know that. She hasn't been doing long enough. I don't like. There's always going to be somebody that doesn't like you for whatever reason. And at my big age, I still deal with that. I still have to remember, girl, it doesn't matter what you do or say. Somebody is just not going to be feeling you. And that's okay. You stay focused on what it is that you're supposed to be doing. That's why vision is so important. That's why team is so important, because y'all can lift each other up. I know for a fact that both Dawn Staley and Becky Hammon had to have that conversation with themselves. They were under high scrutiny multiple times, and they had to just keep pushing forward. It's hard. It's hard. Just playing to win, remembering to do that. It's rough, because playing not to lose is really safe. If you play not to lose, you don't take any risks. You just do exactly what you know is going to work, and you don't try anything different. You know that it might work because it worked last year, and we're just going to keep doing that because that's safe. But is it? Especially if things change and things evolve, and you have to think for the kids you have now. That means you're going to have to do something different. It means you might have to take a risk. It means you might have to have some courage. It means you might have to take a page out of Dawn Staley's or Becky Hammon's book. And if you don't connect to those two ladies, sorry for you. You might want to start reading up on them or looking up their stats, thinking about why they're considered great coaches. I mean, I didn't just name them. Look at the coaches, other coaches that I was talking about, like Greg Popovich and Rudy Tomjanovich. I like saying Rudy Tomjanovich. He has a fun name. And, Phil Jackson. I mean, the greats. You have to look at how they lead their teams and look at what they were able to accomplish and why. Why? Because in some capacity, we're all coaching someone, even if that someone is ourselves. So what dreams do you have? Dr. King, he dreamed about a future that required a lot of courage, a lot of discipline, a lot of action. And Dawn Staley and Becky Hammon, they showed us that these three things are necessary in order to be champions. What are you a champion of? Which brings me to our tip of the week. This week's tip of the week is, what is your dream? Determine your dream. I know that my dream is to have the courage and the discipline to act on my vision. Whatever it is I'm working on, whatever it is I'm trying to do, I want to have the courage and the discipline to get it done. I know for a fact that those are the things that hold me back from whatever I want to do, whatever I want to accomplish. Too scared, giving up too easily, not doing anything about it. Courage, discipline, action. What is your dream? Because I know that my dream is to just overcome those three hindrances of mine. Those are my personal hindrances. So what is your dream? In whatever you're working on, in your school, in your personal life, in your business, what is it that you have a dream of doing? How do you plan to get it done? And if you're not sure, maybe start with those three things: courage, discipline, and action. Think about your campus. Think about the work that you do. What are you working towards? Whatever it is, it's going to require courage, discipline, and action. So remember that as you move forward throughout January, as we remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., remember that as you move throughout your work as an educator, as a leader. Remember that as you move throughout your day as a human. Courage, discipline, and action. It's going to require those things. Rediscover your joy, embrace your true self, let them see you. Thanks for listening to Let Them See You. Until next time, climb with courage, stand in the light, let them see you.